All right, Ken, like what I normally do is I do a little bit of homework and understand what story am I looking at. And usually my first question is, which will still be the first question, is how did you accidentally fall in franchising? But when I looked at your backdrop, you built up such a successful career in pharmaceuticals and medical sales. And so I'm very fascinated on what was the trigger that made you decide to go into business for yourself? Like what pushed you over the edge? But as a part of the question, how did you accidentally fall into franchising?
That's a good question. It's interesting is I don't think I ever thought that I would be a business owner. Never really looked to do that. I had, like you said, I had some pretty good success in pharmaceutical sales and sales management, and then kind of switched over to medical device sales and sales management in 2007 or so, 2005. And so I did that for a number of years, and I'd never ever had kind of a life-changing event in corporate America like I did in 2013. And I think it opened the door. I still say to this day, that's probably the best thing that's ever happened to me, was losing my job. I mean, I had never lost because I had chosen, right? I mean, we typically, most of us choose when we make a move like that to go from company to company or wherever it is. And I lost my job in September, October of 2013. And that's when it opened up the door. And I had started kind of snooping around, looking for kind of a side hustle initially, just something that I could do while I was working my day-to-day job. And so that's when I looked at some franchises. It really is only a couple of franchises that I ever even looked at. And it was one of them was Sports Clips with the haircuts. And then I also looked at a vending company that had a franchise, but that was really it. And most of those are manager led versus, owner led or owner operated. And so in 2013, when I lost my job, I started looking for new roles. And I actually had a position that I'd been working towards for, a couple of months, almost in parallel, while I had started looking at Right at Home. And the only reason Right at Home found me was because I clicked on a link one day in, I don't even remember, it was October, I think, of 2013. And it said, hey, would you like to be your own boss? Would you like whatever? And it said, what would you do if you could? And senior care was one of them. I think business coaching and a couple of others. And I clicked on some things. I got 100 emails and I responded to 2 emails because it was one other home care agency franchise. And then this guy named Alex Cunningham, who was a broker that reached out to me and said, hey, just give me 15 minutes. And I remember being on the golf course, honestly, and reading his email and saying, I responded to it from my phone. And I said, why would I meet with you? And he said, just give me 15 minutes and I'll tell you about an opportunity that I think might fit your profile really, really well. And he knew he had looked at my background online and had seen I'd been in medical sales and pharmaceutical sales and sales leadership for a while. And so I gave him 15 minutes that Friday, and the rest is history. I think as I kind of went through some of the onboarding, just working with him and in conjunction with the guy from Right at Home franchise team, they did a phenomenal job of getting me up to speed as to what I was walking into. And I think the thing that really sold me versus taking the job that I was offered literally the day after I got approved for this Right at Home franchise was because it was an existing franchise and it was already running. Now, it was not a large operation, but I wasn't starting from scratch. And for me, that's what gave me a little bit of comfort, to be able to take that leap of faith into something that, quite honestly, I had no idea what I was getting into. I knew healthcare and I knew people, I think, right? And so I was blessed with having the opportunity to be able to take that jump, and my wife supported me with it, and you know, she's been working in the medical device field for really all of her career and still does. So I was able to do that financially and take that leap of faith initially.
Awesome opening answer. I have a bunch of follow-ups. So mentally, I mean, like I think about the wave of emotions that you have to go through. Losing a job is an emotional thing. And what you said was, for your career, you made the decision when you're going to make a change, and here now a company is doing this. Did part of your emotion was like, okay, I got to push pause and reset? And was part of that, like, if you don't have that moment, do you ever go into business as a business owner?
I don't think I would. I don't think I would have. And I think it gave me the opportunity to kind of reevaluate, be open to something different. I still think that, you know, I remember standing on the porch talking to the COO of a smaller laboratory device company and turning down the position. And this is literally the Tuesday after I'd gone to Discovery Day on Friday. And I turned down the position and said, I'm going to go into business for myself. And I mean, it was such a, you know, I don't know, an epic moment in my life, right? I'd never made that decision. And I think the emotion probably was driven by wanting to be in more control, I guess, without sounding like I'm a control freak. But you know, being able to be my own boss and to maybe do something on my own and build my own thing and write it home was a really awesome fit, especially a resale that I got to take on and make better, right? So,
were you nervous?
Yeah, probably. But I, you know, when you jump into it like this, and especially one that's already on the treadmill on like 7 or whatever, you kind of just go. And I don't used to immerse yourself in it. And I think I didn't have time to be nervous. I mean, I think I had 20 to 25 caregivers. You know, I had 2 people. I had a full-time person in the office and a part-time person, and that was it, and me. And you know, so I didn't have any time to really be nervous. But I do remember just there's a lot you don't know, right? And so there's more that you don't know that kind of gives you more freedom to not maybe be as nervous. So
I mean, there's a ton of parallels to what your career was prior to this, and then obviously the senior care category. Did you have any experience with dealing with an aging parent that gave you any other barometer, or were you basically saying, I'm an expert in the category, I know sales, I know people, let me figure out this parallel universe?
yeah, I didn't have, and it's funny because a lot of times when I meet people that are in the industry, many folks have lots of kind of stories of how they ended up being where they are, and mine, honestly, you know, I don't necessarily use the word divine all the time, but it's really more fortuitous that happened the way it did. I do think that you know, knowing about the aging population and being in healthcare and understanding sort of the demographics the way I did. I mean, with my previous life, I worked with a company. My last job before Right at Home, the company I worked for, we dealt with cardiovascular disease, and that was a lot of times with older folks in general. And so a lot of what we focused on was the aging population. And so I was pretty exposed to that piece of it, but I wasn't an expert at home care. I wasn't an expert at senior care. I've never had to do, yes, my mother is older and had back surgery. right around that same time. So I had to help her with some things, but I didn't have like a really great story to tell like that. But I feel like I got to see it up close and personal real quick. And I think that's, for me, when you're a small agency and being able to be that intimate with the clients. I mean, what we do, Nick, is so deeply personal. And we send strangers into people's homes to do very, very personal things and help them age in place. And I love that. But can you imagine somebody coming to your house this morning to help you bathe? I mean, I can't even imagine that. And I think, that's the kind of business that I wanted to be a part of. It's very different than a product that goes into a health system. And yes, it might save lives, but I don't ever get to meet any of those people. And this was right in your face immediately. You get to see and feel and touch home care, senior care, the difference that we can make in somebody's life, especially the loved ones. It's amazing, the kind of feedback you get.
What's crazy is so you've been in this for 11 years. If I go back to 2014, and we started working with Right at Home in 2009, beginning of 2009. And I think about I can relate to a few things. Like even talking to the media on the PR side of saying this is what this is, like, what? It's okay, the need is there. To even now going 11 years past you get into this business, you could look in your marketplace and see a ton of competition, yet the demand is so high. And so the two things that I think about here is for our grandparents and our great grandparents, how sad is it that they had to battle through the end of life? You're battling through such a weird thing of emotions and pains and everything else that you have to deal with, to how far this has come, yet how far we still need to go. And so your perspective 11 years ago today, I'm sure you look back and it's changed drastically, and it still has plenty of room to grow.
Yeah, there's tons of competition, but there's so many people that need help, and so many more people that want to age at home or wherever they are now. They want to stay or they want to remain, and that's what we've really prided ourselves on, is to help people age in place no matter where their home is. And so, yeah, it's a daunting thing to think about, like just here in the Raleigh-Durham market. And I guess it's fairly similar in the Charlotte market that we're in. There are almost 400 licensed home care agencies just in this area. But I always say, the more murky that competitive landscape is, to me, just makes it kind of that much easier to stand out, because there's such a magnet for all of the other home care agencies to kind of look alike. And so if you're 5% better or different, it's not that hard to sometimes differentiate yourself. But yeah, there's tons of competition. There's, so that's not just for clients, by the way. That's your caregivers and your office staff and anybody else. So all of your employees fall into the same category. And they, if you're a great CNA or a great home health aide or PCA, personal care assistant, you can kind of go work anywhere you want if you're worth a hoot. And to me, that's why we have to build a really great culture. They have to have an amazing experience working here. Yeah, benefits matter, but ultimately they gotta love what they're doing because of the people that they're working with. They want to be with a growing company so that they constantly have work, and that's what we've tried to build here.
I'm glad you said all that, because when I was looking at your background, and I'm also glad to understand that you didn't have to deal with an aging parent to be the intro to the business model. But you leading a sales team, if you're worth a hoot in sales, you could go anywhere as well because you know how to go execute and hit your KPIs and grow a business. And so I would imagine part of your magic is, and if you look backwards at all the things that you accomplished before the moment of becoming a business owner, understand how to manage a team ends up being so critical, because I think that's the next transformation in senior care. Is it's crazy that turnover in the industry is just as high for senior or for caregivers as it is for burger flippers.
Right.
One is so deeply intimate and so vital and so important that there still needs to be the transformation of culture that gets narrowed down. So it's not just dollars and cents of do I pay minimum wage or not. It's the intangibles that make this sticky. So people get into caregiving and want to be in it for a long time. Similar to someone joins your sales team, you want them to be there for a long time so that they continue to produce and have impact. And so have you found, like, if you reflect backwards, that's part of the magic of why you found success, is because you understood how to build a team and a culture?
I do think that definitely plays a role. I mean, I would say there's two things that I think played, three things that played a critical role. I'd say one is building a team. And I do think that knowing how to build a good culture helps. But I would say getting the people around you and the important people in the office, and hiring folks that are committed to the same mission and want to be a part of something bigger. And once you can do that and surround yourself with those kind of people, which to me, I think is the second part that I was able to establish pretty early on, and still have great tenure, because it starts with the office staff. So you can have caregivers that stick around, and that's great. And we have, over half of our caregivers in our Raleigh and Durham office have been here for greater than a year. And if you know anything about the turnover, that's pretty good when you're talking hundreds, by the way. And so that's part of it, but it starts in the office. I mean, we have a staffing and scheduling person in my Raleigh office that's been with us for 10.5 years. And she's been in that same role. And if you can do that, my director of finance that's been with us for 8.5 years, my VP who kind of runs most of the day-to-day operations has been 7.5, 8 years. And just goes on and on and on. We just lost a nurse who moved out of town for her husband's job that took him out of town, but she'd been here for 8.5 years too. And so we have our director of HR, 6 years. I mean, but it starts with that, and then that infuses, I think, the culture piece and gets your caregivers to stick around as well. And then the last piece that I think contributed a lot to our success here is just the ability to manage business and or sell. And one of the most important things as a new owner or as a new franchisee is you have to be able to develop that, reputation sort of on your own. And you can hire a salesperson, but no one will ever sell your company as good as you. And so even if you're uncomfortable, and I tell this to people all the time that hate sales, they're like, oh, I got into this, but I'm more of a finance or operations guy and this, that. Man, even if you are terrible at sales, if you're genuine and you go out and you put your face out there and you make the commitment that, hey, this is my company, I stand behind this, no one will be able to move the needle as much as you will. Yeah. And so I think those three things have really contributed to our success. And the first 4 years or so, I didn't really have a full-time salesperson until we had grown quite a bit.
That's awesome. I think a lot about the chip on the shoulder, and obviously, again, like your story puts one on there immediately. Do you still access that chip when you need to? That you're like, someone else did this to you. Like you have this thing, the intangible, that when you need to break through a brick wall, you can. Do you still access the chip on the shoulder?
I don't know if I necessarily access it. I think Yeah, I mean, maybe sometimes I need to reflect back on that, and I had to. I actually, I'll tell you this. I actually reached out to my previous employer, that I had worked with last, and the guy that I kind of reported to that had basically made the decision. By the way, the company got bought out 9 months later, so that was part of that. But anyway, I reached out to him and kind of reconnected, and I felt like I had to almost get rid of that chip a little bit, and I felt, I think, a lot better about it. But I think it's probably not healthy to harbor that too much.
That's interesting. I think about, and it's more so maybe not chip. It's more like fuel. I think about like Jordan being cut from his high school team. He still accessed that when he needed to say, I didn't like how that felt, but it's going to fuel me to do amazing things in my career. And you can look at it with Disney or Einstein, like some of the most creative and largest geniuses that have ever existed. You say, talk about that fuel, and it ends up being valuable, whether it needs to be accessed or not. They use it as almost a motivation to say, like, I didn't like how that felt, and I'm never going to feel like that again,
Now that you put it like that, I mean, I do think that definitely fuels a lot of what we've done. I mean, I was newly married. I think there was, part of that. I think that, I never wanted to feel like that again. I knew that I had never had that feeling, right, of somebody else cutting my career short, right? And so I knew I never wanted to have that feeling again. So yes, that does fuel me. I think I'll share this. I know that when I was in high school, so going back that far, this is what has fueled me all along. And that is somebody telling me, hey, Ken, college isn't for everybody. You don't have to, and now granted, I don't think you have to go to college to be a success in life and a contributing human. But I just remember that the way I felt when somebody told me that basically, this might be a little tough road for you. And so I feel really good about kind of going back to that to help fuel me. And I think probably losing my job at 45 and having what I considered almost a midlife crisis at 45 has definitely done that too.
I appreciate you sharing the high school story. I mean, for me, I weighed 305 pounds in high school.
Wow.
And so the bullying, felt the pain, like the pain of that is what ended up fueling me the first round. I was always an entrepreneur. What fueled me the second time was a boss saying that my two ideas were not good, which has turned into now a tremendous run as a business owner. But it's interesting when you really reflect back on the equation of what pushes you through. That's fascinating to me. And now if I think about even caregiving, like, boy, for you in that moment to have someone that says, I'm here for you, give you the shoulder, or for me when I was going through it to give you the shoulder, it changes things. And ultimately, like, you're diffusing the bomb for seniors who need that shoulder. And it's interesting when you think about like the scaffolding that a business like this can put around people. Yeah. What's your North Star now? What do you dream of? What's your dream of what you want to accomplish with the business?
I think looking at the future, and we adopted EOS.
We did
2 years ago, I think now. Gosh, I can't believe it. But anyway, we adopted that as a company and have done a pretty good job of implementing that all the way through our organization. So we have some pretty well-established goals and that kind of thing from a year out to 3 years to 5 years. But I think, we currently are in two of the top markets probably in the country out of if you look at all the markets, the greater Charlotte market and the greater Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill markets are amazing markets. People move here. Nobody's moving out. It's an aging population here. And so I really look towards just organic growth and continuing to take care of more and more people. The market, our market share in the Raleigh-Durham area is, we've had those agencies have been around since 2008. So those are well established, a little different than in the Charlotte market. So right now I want to really focus on continuing that growth, but also getting the Charlotte market to the point where it's similar to the Raleigh-Durham market for us as a market share. For me personally, I feel like EOS and just sort of what I've worked on and what my goal is here in the next couple of years is to continue to expand how I work on the business versus in it. And so I feel like in the last 3 years, I've really been able to kind of step away from the day-to-day, maybe by like 3-4 years, and work to be able to develop different aspects of our business versus, the day-to-day grind almost. And I think, so looking forward 3-5 years, I want to even step away more from that and be able to, I've been in it 11 years. I don't know that my goal is to build it to ultimately just, sell, but I think we've established a really great way of doing business. I have an amazing leadership team here, and to continue to support them in a way that allows them to run the company is probably my number one goal.
I love the blueprint of your story, and I'm sure it aligns with so many human beings out there. So many folks, though, get up to that edge and can't make that jump. And some of it, like in a time like now, some of the turbulence in the economy or the job or whatever else, politics, can create a moment where that push is automatic. You had someone actually push you off the ledge. Do you have any closing advice for anybody that might be watching this and is at that edge but can't figure out how to jump off?
Yeah, I don't know that there's a silver bullet of any advice. I think you just have to look at it as a journey, and there's no fast way of getting to a level of success or whatever. And so I think understanding that as you kind of jump into something like this, and I would say do your research, because not all franchises are created equal. And I think when I look back to going to Discovery Day and meeting the people from Omaha and how Right at Home treated me as a new family member, seek that out. And make sure that you're joining good people. And I think that's one thing that I can say from Right at Home standpoint. I felt really, really good about the people that I was dealing with that were there to support me. And they've gotten really, really good at supporting their new franchisees. I mean, they still support me. Great. But it's so important early on. And so that kind of support is what will help you get over that initial fear, because they'll hold your hand all the way through, and they give us the formula. They really do. You just, you have to trust yourself, trust your gut, and trust the people. And that's my only advice as far as, will you take that next step? And ultimately, you can be in much more control of your career, of your life, financially, whatever it is that your goals are.
I love it. I mean, Ken, what a wonderful story. I love the success that you've had. You've had a tremendous run, and I'm grateful that I got to spend some time with you. Thanks for doing this.
I appreciate being a part of it, Nick. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. For Ken, I'm Nick. This was another episode of Meet the Z. Take care. Awesome.